Welcome! In this video, I'll be taking a quick look at Eris, or Eris, however you say your name, an epic grade DPS class Elune. Looking at her base stats at 6-star level 60, her HP is at a decent 22.4k, with her attack being at a 5.1, almost 5.2k, and her physical and magic defense being at 2.5 to 2.6k. Her base attack speed at 109 puts her a little bit on the high side of the mid-range for attack speeds. She also has an increased crit stat because she is a DPS class. As with most epic Elunes, their base stats are lower compared to the legendaries, but her stats are still pretty good nonetheless. Moving her up through the Transcendence up to a max of +5, she ends up at a decent 33.7k HP, with an okay 7.7k attack and a 3.8k to 4k magic defense. Moving to her skills, her normal skill is a basic magic damage attack to the frontline enemy. This skill at base deals 130 plus 110% of her attack as magic damage. As the skill is leveled up, it ends up at 1000 plus 158% of her attack as magic damage. This is just a basic attack skill with nothing special, attacking only the frontline enemies. Her special skill is a self-buff. The skill buffs herself for 3 turns. At base, it increases her attack by 20%. Once she uses this skill and creates this buff that gives her the attack by 20%, it lets her take 3 turns in a row. But she can only use her normal skill during those 3 turns. She cannot swap turns. If you are fighting someone like an Artemil during this time and you're using this, after each turn that she takes of using her normal skill, the Artemil will revenge its judge passive every time that happens, meaning that she can get killed very easily by using her against an Artemil, so it is something to be aware of. As this skill is leveled up to its max +6, the attack increase goes up to a decent 45%. Something else to note when using this skill, as this skill uses a turn itself to buff, and then it forces you to take 3 turns of your normal skill, you end up using 4 turns. So if turns is a concern of yours, please be aware that this will take 4 turns by using this. Another thing to be aware of is that if you're using Weiwei on the team and Weiwei has buffed attack onto Eris, then after she uses this skill, it will maintain its 2 turns of cooldown, or turns left on it as the buff, but it will only give you 2 turns of that increased attack on the skill 1. The third hit of your skill 1 will not have the Weiwei buff. As you are using normal attacks, it will be decreasing the buff and not rebuffing it. Moving to the ultimate skill, Tempest Slash, this skill is a very unique skill. It hits a multitude of times, but deals all 3 types of damage: physical damage, magic damage, and soul damage. It does 110 plus 92% of the attack as each one, meaning that this skill is strong against everything. This skill, as you level it up, goes up to a very nice 700 plus 149% of attack as each type of damage. As the soul damage doesn't have any way to reduce the damage, that damage is full damage. You can consider it as an ignore defense type of damage, as it also ignores shields or anything else that the enemy might have. Moving to her passives, her first passive: as long as she is alive, all of your allies have an increase of speed by 10, making them move very quickly. She also gains immunity to attack speed down effects. This means that you cannot hit her with an attack speed down. She will maintain that. Moving to her passive 2. This one reduces any reflect damage that she receives. This does not include the counter from an Artemil, but will do any reflect damage, like from say tanks or the tank gear that reflects a portion of the damage back to the attacker. This will reduce that damage by 75%, making the reflect that she takes very low. On her passive 3, this one, every attack deals 150% additional damage to enemies with a barrier or safeguard, making her very good for killing anything that creates a barrier on themselves. This means if you're fighting something like a Freya that buffs the barrier for the entire team, whenever she attacks, as long as the barrier is there, she will deal 150% additional attack. This can be quite useful when pairing it with her ultimate skill if the enemy has a barrier, as during the time that they have a barrier, the attack damage increases by 150%, meaning that the soul damage from it, which they will be taking directly and will not be reduced by the barrier or shield, will be very high. This also lets her do a very significant amount of damage to any target as the damage increases by a lot. Looking over at her skill gem effects, her first skill is a magic damaging skill, therefore the recommended magic crit rate are not a bad idea. The 5% chance to bleed for 2 turns is not that high, but considering this is going to be the skill that you'll be using most, and the skill to enhances it to make it hit harder, and you'll be using it more often, it is not bad. Though going with more crit rate on it is also a good idea, as well as more damage, just to make sure that you're doing as much damage as possible with her. The special skill is a buffing skill, so the yellow gems that it recommends is a good idea. Going with the increased speed from the violet gem isn't too great, isn't too bad, but it's up to you if you want to do it. Going with a full yellow stack would just increase the amount of attack buff that she gives herself. The recommended one for the increase here for the effect is a 5% chance of increasing the crit rate by 10% for 2 turns. This is a very low chance, and the 10% increase isn't that significant. So, going with a full set of nice yellow gems would end up being better in most cases, as she will increase the amount of damage that she does. Going with the last one now, the last one is a physical and magic damage along with crit rate. This one is a very good one to use, as putting all of them in there is nice. The 10% of obtaining 2 souls when defeating an enemy isn't bad, it's not great, but since the skill does all types of damage, the increased physical, the increased magic, and the increased crit rate benefits everything. Looking at her dimension slate, things you would want to focus on her will be crit rate and attack. Those are going to be your main things. Attack, crit rate, power, as she is DPS. She does not need accuracy, as she does not apply any debuffs. The attack speed is good to allow her to move quickly. As she is an epic Elune and her base stats are low, any additional PDEF, MDEF, or HP that you can get can help her stay alive. But as she is a DPS class, focusing more on attack, crit rate, and crit power are usually the way to go for her. In terms of gear, any gear that you can get her to give her higher attack and crit rate is recommended for anything that you can do. Going with a Baron J set isn't bad, as it will increase her damage, especially if you do debuffs that will give her a higher crit rate. The Great Spirit set can also be nice, allowing her to take an extra turn. She does not need anything else like the Full Moon set, as she does not apply any debuffs, unless you want to go with a Full Moon set and go with a full 6-piece set for PvP situations where the enemy might be trying to stun her. As she is an epic and usually will have low base stats including HP, a lot of times she is one-shot, so going with the full Moon set isn't always going to be advantageous to her. try to put gear on her that increases her attack as much as possible. The main idea of using her is going to be for the full damage, and will also be for two reasons. First reason being you want to have a speed advantage over your enemy by giving the entire team a 10 speed increase. The other advantage to her is that she is high damage and is useful against shield or barrier type enemies, meaning that you would want to take her into teams that rely on barriers such as Freya. Overall, Eris is a very good Elune. She does provide some utility for your team as well as a nice amount of damage. Though in the current meta of high-end air battles, most of the battles do have Artemis on defense, which revenge constantly, making her really only useful for that increased speed at the beginning. After that, after she attacks, she will usually die to the Artemis as it will counter her and kill her with her low base stats. So it is something to be wary of or be aware of, as she is quite squishy to a lot of the things out there. That's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I will answer them as soon as possible. Thank you.